Welcome to Finding the Fire. The fire inside is what drives us. Left unattended, it can burn out of control. In Finding the Fire, Cindy Jacobson speaks with guests, telling stories of trauma and triumph. In sharing our experiences, we find connection and understanding. Join her now as we burn through the walls of separation. Get ready for Finding the Fire, and let's find your spark.
Hello, everybody. Today we have James McFadden here with us. And I really appreciate you being here, James. I canceled and rescheduled about 4 times this morning because I got a lot of stuff on my plate. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad I can be here.
So with everything going on in the world, I have tried to be very PC and keep thoughts and feelings to myself because that's the world we're in right now. We have to worry about everybody else instead of what's true to our own self and our own heart. And right now, I mean, the whole world right now, okay, you guys, we're all in shutdown, right, James? You're there with your green screen. I'm here in my office with the poor lighting, which our podcast producer hates, but we're here. So, and it's just our situation and our reality right now. And we're doing what we're told because we're told this virus is going to kill us all. So we have to stay home. Is that about right?
That's what
Did
they
I
say.
sum that up right? That's what I hear too. And, when it first started, I don't know about you, but when it first came out, I'm like, you know what? There's something bigger going on. There's something bigger than a virus because we have lived through a lot of viruses. I'm a nurse. I've lived through many, and I've shared on a couple other podcasts. I won't go into detail, but when swine flu came around in 2009, we went through the whole apocalypse training at the hospital, which I feel was prepped for this day and time because there was no apocalypse then. We had all the tents set up. We had the radiation training, it felt like, because the hazmat suits. We were told if we were exposed, we would have to be self-quarantined to our homes for 7 days at that point. And it was scary. It was so scary, being a nurse, being told that I had a new baby and we were all going to die. Well, my baby ended up being one of the very first diagnosed cases of swine flu / H1N1 here locally in southern Utah. And so I was quarantined to my house with her, and she ended up faring through it pretty well. She had a cold. The rest of us apparently got it and built immunities with no symptoms because they ended up testing us to see if we had immunity so we could go back to work. And so when this happened this year, I'm like, okay, something else is going on. This virus they're blowing it way bigger than even 2009 with that virus. So I didn't know what was going on, but now we all know that the whole world shut down. And we joked about that on an earlier podcast we did. I didn't think it was really going to happen, but we joked about it, and here we are. And I've kept my mouth shut, watching everything go through. And I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. If we're overrun with cases of COVID-19 in our hospitals and our nurses are being bombarded and we're told to stay home to save our nurses, which I am all for. I'm all for, you guys. But all of a sudden, all these viral TikTok videos started coming out of all the hospitals and all the nurses and all the choreographed dancing with multiple staff members, not just 1 or 2, but there's one I saw with probably 30 plus staff members choreographed. Apparently there's no patients or they wouldn't have time to do that, right? It just wasn't adding up. And suddenly I'm hearing, I have, friends still in the medical field. And a few weeks ago, they got gag orders because the information was coming out that they had no patients in the hospital. But what was being fed to us on the news was, oh my gosh, we're bombarded, we're overwhelmed, we have no ventilators, we have no masks, we have no PPE. We're all going to die and we're unprepared. And this is somebody's fault. Everybody wants to point fingers everywhere else. And they suddenly had gag orders and couldn't talk. I'm like, that doesn't feel right with me. And then come the viral TikTok videos. And then I'm just like, things are not adding up. Okay. And I think most of us know that by now, at least most of us that think for ourselves that something else is going on. I have a friend who's she's with the police department, and she had some fishy things that happened over there too, because she was like, hey, I'm all for protecting our police officers, protecting our front linemen, protecting our societies. And some things weren't adding up with her either. So she had a different awakening, if you would, to what's going on. But I think a lot of us are getting to that point to where we're starting to think for ourselves and stop just being fed the information on the news. Do you want to share anything here, James? I'm just kind of going off because I'm on a rampage today, and I'm no filter today. All bets are off. So, what are your thoughts on what's going on?
It's interesting. Even reflecting on a couple of conversations we've had recently, because I did have a little bit of a different take even coming into this. I had actually talked to my son and my wife, and interestingly, because I'm not a doomsday, Chicken Little, sky's falling, and everybody's gonna die, and yet with this, I could see where we were heading, and that it wasn't going to. Wasn't going to be pretty, but I totally. We all see exactly what you're saying, and there is no doubt that the stories that we're hearing are definitely not adding up in some respects, What's really interesting to me is how we are managing this from an emotional perspective, and how we are dealing with those emotions and releasing those emotions. And so the TikTok videos, I totally agree with you. Though some of them, it just doesn't feel like it fits the narrative. And but New York's narrative is not our narrative, especially here in southern Utah. We were on ABC News. They were talking about us like we weren't doing anything, and everything was business as usual, which wasn't entirely true as well. But I think what I have to look at personally is I look at my wife, who, if she got this, would not fare well and might not make it. And the other thing I look at is, even though we've been in shutdown now for 30 days, we're still seeing cases. And if it's got a 14-day gestation, there's definitely people that are getting sick, supposedly in lockdown. So I agree with you. The narrative that's being fed to us, there's just so much that doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. But we're in so many different microcosms. I joked with my wife the other night, and I said, history will speak of this time as the great social experiment, to see just how people will react and behave, and some people are rising to the occasion and handling it with dignity, and some aren't. So it's definitely got people looking at things differently, for sure.
Absolutely. And I agree with you on that. Like, of course, we want to protect, like you say, your wife is at risk. My grandmother is at risk. We have comorbidities and autoimmune things in our families, and we don't want to put anybody at risk, that's for sure. And I think that's why everybody was so willing so quickly to do exactly what we were told. We were told to stay in place, stop working, quarantine for 14 days, going on 30, pushing 40 by the time they're wanting to open back up. Even then, some people want to go longer than the 40 days. So of course we want to keep people safe. Nobody wants anybody in harm's way. And this is where I get a little frustrated with people, because people are starting to attack each other, right? They're saying you're going to harm me if you do this or that or the other. And nobody wants to harm anybody. Humans are good. Humans have good hearts. They don't want to put anybody at risk, but also they're starting to put themselves at risk if they can't feed their families and they can't pay their bills and they can't keep a roof over their head. They can't keep the lights on. And of course we have government helping with all that. I don't want to go down that road right now. The road I want to go down to is, does this feel good to your heart? Yesterday, I watched this video in Meridian, Idaho, where this mom apparently had let her children play on the playground equipment. And there was other moms in the park, and they were there in the grass, social distancing, but letting their kids get out and get some sunshine. And I guess there they have a rule that no playground equipment. So 2 police officers came and arrested the mom in front of her children, in front of all these other moms. And they're like, what are you doing? These moms didn't know each other, but they're like, what are you doing? And they got out their cameras and started recording and asked them, does this feel good to your heart? Does it feel good to your heart to arrest a mom for allowing her kids to play on playground equipment? And who is she putting at risk by doing that other than herself? If anybody else is at risk and they don't come to the park, that's their choice. She's the one allowing her kids to do that. She's choosing to apparently put herself at risk, which that's a whole nother story, but they're arresting her for letting our kids play on playground equipment. Like, if we are in a police state now, and I never even believed in police state, and when people talked about that, I'm like, whatever, they're just for our best interest, but you're really going to arrest a mom letting our kids play on the playground. And that, to me, yesterday, I was like, this is not okay. What are we doing right now? Here in southern Utah, we have very few cases, very, very few cases, thankfully. I'm very grateful for that, and I know it's not the same everywhere. But what I'm going to say, and what brought me on today on kind of a tangent, is my grandmother, and I've spoken about her a few times. She is my person. My grandmother's my person. She's 94 years old. I attribute so much of my life to her. She's was always there for me when I needed it. And my whole family. She has 6 children and I don't know how many grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but she's always been there for everybody. And she is a strong woman. She has looked death in the face her entire life since she was 6 years old. She had an appendix rupture, and the doctors told her mom and dad to say goodbye to her because she wasn't going to live. And she was like, I thought that was funny because I knew I was going to live. And that's been her mentality since she was 6 years old. She's been in and out of the hospital multiple times. She has been in and off hospice, which, if you don't know what hospice is a palliative care that they give to you at the end of life, where they think you have 6 months or less to live. And she has literally beaten the odds off hospice at least 6 times that I'm positive of, maybe more. And even the hospice doctors and nurses are like, I have never seen anybody recover like she has. She has got a strong spirit. And if she wants to recover, there's nothing stopping her, as long as we're giving her water and not giving her what I call a Dr. Kevorkian cocktail, which hospice has nice medicines for patients that are in pain when they pass away, so they aren't passing away in pain. Having said that, my grandma is super sensitive to medicine. She's always refused medicine, even when she breaks her bones and she has to have surgery. She will, as soon as she's coherent enough, she will tell the doctors to stop giving her the narcotics and the pain meds. And she would take ibuprofen or Tylenol, and that's it. And so she's a fighter, and she's strong, and she's fought back, literally fought back. And I've had to fight for her a few times. Being a nurse, like I know medical, and I know my grandma, and I was there to support her in her desire to live. And of course, nobody's going to live forever, and we don't want to prolong her life. It's not like she's on life support and IVs for nutrition or anything else. But as long as she has a spirit to live and she's able to eat and drink and feed herself and wants to live, then let's support her in that. And she'll say to me flat out, I'm not ready to meet my Heavenly Father yet. I still have things to do. And she's getting dementia now, and that might be changing. So she might be ready to meet her Heavenly Father. Well, she is now again on hospice. She's in a care facility here locally in Southern Utah. And they're doing an amazing job with her and keeping their patients safe. They abided to the lockdown rules where no visitors were allowed in to keep COVID out of their facility, because we know, like, there's facilities in Washington State and elsewhere that once it gets in the facility, it's pretty much a death sentence for all of these elderly people. So we're very grateful for them for keeping them safe. We received a phone call last week that she was ill, and she had been throwing up and had a bout of diarrhea. And, she's gone through this a lot, so we didn't think a whole ton of it until we got a call the next day, and they said they think she has maybe 3 days left. And of course, being my person, being family, she has lots of kids and grandkids, and we would like to say goodbye to our grandma. And some places that's not happening. These patients are dying with nobody by their side. We're hearing the reports of it. And my heart immediately sunk when I heard that. And so we called the facility, and I'm like, if she's dying, then I would want to bring her to my home so she could die surrounded by family members that love her. We're not putting anybody at risk that way except ourselves. And if she's dying anyway, she's not at risk of getting the virus. And if she is, it's not going to change her life expectancy if she has 3 days or left to live. So we were having this conversation, and they said, you know what, the facility does allow for family to come sit by the patient's side if they're in the active dying stage. And so we were waiting for that time when they told us she was in the active dying stage and we could come sit by her side. And we were on the phone with them multiple times a day, every shift, talking to the doctor, talking to the nurses, talking to the CNAs and the staff directly taking care of her. And we were receiving that information yesterday that we could go sit by her side because, she was probably not going to be with us 48 hours or less at that point. And waiting. Finally, I get a call, and they're like, you know what? I'm sorry. The doctor just ordered a COVID-19 test on her, even though she's showing zero symptoms of the typical symptoms of COVID. But now this is the information they're giving us. Now we know there are also GI symptoms with COVID. So they want to do a COVID-19 test on her. The test just arrived. It'll take 36 to 48 hours to get a result on that. And I said, well, okay, but that's not going to change her life expectancy one way or another. So can we come in and hold her hand and say goodbye to her? Well, we don't know about that. We're going to have to wait. And I'm like, what do you mean? Why? Like, who are we putting at risk? Well, if she does have COVID and we let you guys in, then you're going to have to self-quarantine for 14 days in your house. Okay, let me do that. That's my choice. I'm putting myself at risk. This is my grandmother. I don't want her to die alone in a facility and I know these nurses and CNAs care about her, but they are not her family. And they have not been there I'm 41. They have not been there for 41 years, or she has not been there for them for 41 years. Or, she's 94 years old. She has a lot of family and friends that want to hold her hand and say their last goodbyes. And we're now being stopped from doing that because they have to test her for COVID. Why? Why does it matter? She's dying. Why can't we come say goodbye to her? There are so many things that I could go off on right now, but I am so upset about this that they will not let us in to see her, to say goodbye, even though they said that we could. And now because they have to test her for the virus, even though she is the one already dying, we can't come in and see her. And so she is probably not going to last today, I imagine. And we don't get to say goodbye to her. And I am completely devastated right now. And I know they're just doing what they're told, so it's not them that I am upset with. But what I want to swear right now, but I know this can be syndicated, so I'm not going to. But what in the heck are we doing? We are treating people as a number instead of a person. We're treating them as a commodity, information has gotten out that hospitals are getting paid per diagnosis. I don't know if this goes across the line for care facilities, but I wouldn't doubt that because Medicaid pays out. That if they are diagnosed positive with COVID, they get $13,000. And if they get put on a ventilator, they get $39,000. So who does it benefit to test these patients positive? My grandma's already dying. She's been on hospice for a long time. And now they're stopping family from saying goodbye to her because they want what? A number for a statistic? Are you kidding me?
That is definitely the crime in all of this, if you will. Just hearing all these stories like this, where common sense it has no place, and my heart goes out to you right now, Cindy. I really wish there was something that can be done, and it's not right. It doesn't make sense. And you would think that intelligent people who are capable of making intelligent decisions would do that, because the day society stops depending on the intelligence of those around them, the professionals of those around them who have been making life and death decisions for their entire career, when we can't allow them to make those decisions, and they have to rely on a bureaucrat's orders, that is really the tragedy of this whole situation. And there's a couple things that we can do, but it's heartbreaking to hear that.
That's exactly right, James. Like, this is the tragedy, when we are no longer caring about people as a person, caring about our communities and families as people, and treating them like a leper, or a number or a statistic, or it's me against you. And it's not me against you. We are all human. We have hearts. We care about each other. We're going to do what's right and protect ourselves, just like we did with the flu that kills everybody. Sorry, I got distracted with the numbers. We're wrapping up our time, but there's so many deadly things out there, and we're not hateful, harmful, vengeful people. We're good. We have hearts. We care. We have brains. We can think for ourselves. We don't need to be told by bureaucrats and by people that have lots of money in their accounts what is best for us, when we know what's best for us and we know what feels right to our heart. And it does not feel right to my heart to let my grandmother die in a bed alone and be a statistic for their numbers. And we have 20 seconds left, James, so I'll let you take it away. And I don't know.
I think it's just time. It's time for us to do some introspection and to really look at how we're reacting to this whole thing. Common sense needs to be restored, and hopefully we can do that.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Finding the Fire, where we are finding deeper connections through sharing our life experience. Being placed in foster care, losing a child to SIDS, and a husband to suicide, Cindy has turned her story into the fuel that drives her. To be featured as a guest, go to findingthefire.com. Cindy is a former NICU nurse, a foster parent, has started a nonprofit, helps others, and supports her family by selling real estate. To find out more, go to involvedcommunity.com.